Good morning, everyone. Good morning. And that includes you folks in the Lincoln seats. I'm so happy to be here. I did not know about this wonderful place, and since I walked in the door, I have been just overcome with a sense of peace, and I really enjoy it. So thank you for that wonderful vibe. My name is Jim Russell, and as Nancy said, I'm the managing director of Carrollwood Players Theater. I'm especially grateful to Christine for inviting me, but I'm also very excited to see numerous familiar faces in the audience tonight, including some volunteers and some of you who Christine has brought to see shows at the theater. So really excited to see you again. Before I begin, I just, of course, want to thank you for this opportunity, and I want to share a famous quote from the theater that I think applies to what I'm going to talk about. And that quote is from Auntie Mame. Do you know it? Most poor suckers are starving to death, but life is a banquet. I think I said it backwards. Well, as you can see, I'm not starving. And I want to let you know that even though the theme of my speech is use it all, how to be a master chef with life's leftovers, this is not actually a presentation about cooking. In fact, I'm a terrible cook, so I do like to go out to eat. I'm just a guy here today sharing with you something that I'm very grateful for in my life, and that is that I have had so many wonderful life meals by making use of the leftovers from other meals in my life. And that's what I mean by how to be a master chef, using it all, using all of those leftovers. And I've just had an interesting life with a lot of opportunities to do that, to cross-pollinate my passions from one part of life's journey to the next. And I'd like to try to inspire others to do that. And I'll give you some examples. When I say leftovers, I mean things you may have experienced or done in your life that may not seem to apply to where you are in life now, but maybe they do and you don't realize it. And that's where you can use those leftovers. But first, a little bit about myself. I was born in a small town in the Catskill Mountains in upstate New York. Beautiful place, not a lot going on. And the first 10 years of my life were spent fishing and hiking and swimming in the swimming hole and going to family picnics and being at the lake in the summertime with the family. And that might have been my whole life. And it would have been just fine if it had been. But something happened when I was 10 years old that changed my life forever. And I like to refer to it as the D word, divorce. So at the age of 10, I left a small town in upstate New York and went with my mother to Washington, D.C. to continue my journey in this life. And I am so glad that I did, because I fell in love with Washington, D.C., and I found a lot of opportunities to pursue my passions. Now, back in my old small town in New York, from the minute I could walk and talk, I was passionate about performing. That is my life's true love, acting and creating theater, which is why I work for a theater. But in addition to that, I was interested in travel. My father worked for IBM and he traveled the world, and from a young age, I got a lot of postcards from all around the world. I've always been interested in languages. My mother, from the time I was in preschool and from when I started going to school on the bus, would teach me a different way to say hello and goodbye in different languages every day. So we'd say goodbye in the morning in Japanese, and then when I got home, we'd say hello in Greek, and that's where my future passion for travel was born. But when the big D word happened and I went to Washington, D.C., I became fascinated with history and culture and the story of our nation. And I really started to expand my interests beyond performing, and eventually became a licensed master tour guide. I could tell you a lot about those Lincoln seats, but today's not the day for that. And I took groups of people on tours around Washington, D.C., and the history and story of our nation's capital still passionately captivates me to this day. And of course, my interest in performing helped me as a tour guide. And that's the first little sign of using leftovers from my interest in performing to be a successful tour guide and to make sure that my audiences on tour were captivated and having a wonderful time. Then, during high school, I was in the high school plays. How many of you were in a high school play? And how many of you are involved with plays now? All the hands go down. Christine is. When I was in high school, I was even in a George Washington miniseries starring Barry Bostwick as George Washington, because I lived 2 miles from Mount Vernon where they were filming. Then I suddenly moved to France for a year because my father, working for IBM, was transferred to France. And I spent a year living there, traveling around the country, learning the language, learning about the history and culture. And I really realized at that point that travel was a passion of mine. After high school, and that was during high school, I went on to participate in college and was involved with theater there. I did community theater. I paid my bills and my tuition and for my books by working in retail as a retail manager. And I tried always from those early days in my 20s to use leftovers and to try to cross-pollinate my passions. So I managed a 7-Eleven when I was 20 years old, and we had poetry readings at 7-Eleven. And there was a group of people who loved to come in and get our great 7-Eleven coffee and do poetry readings. I got in trouble with corporate about that. I also was a manager at Books A Million, and I organized a program where we could do play readings at Books A Million. So I'm working in retail, which isn't anybody's favorite thing to do, but I'm trying to bring with me my passions and to somehow weave those into this horrible job that I have in retail. The best one of all was when I worked at Big Lots. And we had a whole Meet Santa Claus at Big Lots. I was Santa Claus. That was not organized by corporate. It was just something that we did. So as you can see, I was just trying to bring anything that interested me into whatever I was doing. I went on to work for a major nationwide travel agency. They also happen to tow cars, and they're called AAA. But I went to work for them, and I started leading group tours. Now I'm using my experience from being a tour guide in DC. I'm using my organizational skills from being a retail manager, and I'm taking groups of people on tours around the world. I went to China 17 times, the same exact itinerary, the same hotels, the same exact tour every day. I did it 17 times. Part of our tour was a cruise on the Yangtze River. Has anyone ever done that? I bet you someone in here has. And you know that those wonderful boats that they have plying the Yangtze River have some really young people working on board, young Chinese people working as crew, cabin attendants, servers. It's like a regular cruise, but on a much smaller scale. And as I started to get to know these crew people, we were on the same boat 17 times. Different group of travelers each time, of course, but I started teaching the Chinese crew members some Broadway show tunes. And each time I returned, I was going I was going every few months over a course of several years. Each time I returned, we would have rehearsals in the evening up in the lounge after the retired folks had gone to bed. And the climax of this whole process of teaching the show tunes to the Chinese crew members on the ship was that on my last tour of China, we actually did put on a Broadway review starring the Chinese crew members on the Yangtze River. So again, I was just, how can I make my tour guide job in China that's repeating itself for the 17th time, literally, more interesting by weaving and using some leftovers from other parts of my life, my theater and performing interest. During my time, I also led a group of people on a tour that was supposed to be a luxury train trip from Paris to Istanbul on the famed Orient Express. That's what we were planning to sell to AAA members. And I asked, could we make it a murder mystery trip? And we did have a murder mystery on the tour. It was based on Agatha Christie, and I played 7 different characters on the train as we traveled from Paris to Istanbul. One of those characters involved wearing a heavy fake mustache and a very weird costume, and we happened to be crossing the border between Romania and Bulgaria at that time, and my appearance did not match my passport photo. And I had a little explaining to do for the border officials. And that was just another way that I was able to interweave my theater interests with my travel job. And we had a lot of fun on the murder mystery. And I got to wear a white tuxedo as Poirot on the train. Then I moved to a horse farm in Ocala with 200 acres and 60 horses. It was an equestrian center. We weren't raising horses. We were teaching riding and training horses. And that happened because a very good friend of mine convinced me to quit my career in travel and come help manage this horse farm. So I managed a very busy 200-acre equestrian center in Ocala. And during that time, we started the world's first horseback theater company. And it was called the Six-Legged Theater Company. And we did skits and Broadway music on horseback. And actually, it captured the attention of PBS, and they came out and did a documentary about it. We did an altered version of the musical Rent on horseback, and we also did a James Bond movie on horseback. Then I went back to the travel industry and continued to lead groups on tours all over the country. One of my favorites that I helped create was a Harry Potter themed tour of England and Scotland. I think you get the theme here. The theme is, whatever you're doing, there's something that you've done in your past that's not related to what you're doing that you can use to enhance the experience either for yourself or for the people around you. And it's a lot of fun when you strive to do that. And I bet you there are so many different backgrounds and careers represented in this room. And I would love to find out, if I had time to talk to each of you, what you did and what you're doing now and how you're using what you did in what you do now. Eventually, after 9/11, the travel industry declined for a while, and unfortunately, after 20 years, I was laid off from the travel industry. Now, all during that time when I wasn't traveling, I was involved with Carrollwood Players, the local community theater here, for many years as an actor and a director. But once the travel industry wound down and I didn't have a job with corporate America anymore, somehow, miraculously, I became the only full-time employee of Carrollwood Players Community Theater, and I've been there ever since. And since that time, I've had the opportunity to reverse course and apply some of the non-theater things that I've done to my work as the managing director at Carrollwood Players. So I wrote a musical about Washington, D.C., and it's called Pop Goes America, and it retells the story of our nation's capital and our country's history using pop songs like Madonna and Pink Floyd and other groups like that. What we did is we rewrote the words to their famous songs, kept their music, changed the words, and told history about America and about Washington, D.C. In that time, after having lived in France for a year and fallen in love with French music, I wrote and we presented a musical about a famous French singer who's not so famous if you're not a French-speaking person. His name is Jacques Dutronc. He was married to Françoise Hardy. You may have heard of her. In any event, we did a world premiere of a musical that I wrote and that we presented about him, and all the songs were performed in French. So now I'm using my travel background and my interest in the history of Washington, D.C. at the community theater, creating new and interesting stories and shows. And I guess what I'm trying to say in my short time that I'm allowed to talk is that if you have done something in your life that you are really knowledgeable or passionate about, what could you be doing today to use that in a creative way? Do you work at a gas station? That's kind of lame to run the register at this Chevron station all day, but some people have to do that to pay the bills. But maybe you have a background in singing or you love singing. Sing to your customers. Do you have a boring data entry job on the 15th floor of a corporate building, but a secret passion for gardening? Start an herb garden in the break room. There was one other example. Oh, do you spend all day delivering packages and love to draw and sketch? Leave drawings for your customers on top of their packages. I think you get the idea of what I'm saying by you can really be a master chef at life by using what you know in unique and creative and clever ways wherever you are in life right now, whether it's a great place or a not so great place. If you let your passions follow you and you find creative ways to put those into your current situation, it can really brighten your day and the day of those around you. So maybe some of you who raised your hand about being in your school play really loved being in that play. But then you went on to college and a career in accounting or marketing or wedding planning. Maybe now you're retired and you have a lifetime of experience in your field, but nothing to do. You could volunteer at your local community theater. We got some passionate guys back there who love running sound and lights. You could do that at a community theater. If you have an accounting background, guess what? We have to balance the books too at our community theater. You get my idea that there are wonderful ways waiting out there in the world for you to put your passions and your knowledge to work so that all those leftovers from all those meals you've had in life can create another great meal for you today. Thank you very much. Oh, I forgot. I have a closing joke. I forgot. It's short. It's a travel joke. A husband and wife, many of you in here are husbands and wives, packed their suitcases in a hurry and made it to the airport just in time for their flight. And she turns to her husband and says, "I wish I had brought the refrigerator." And he says, "The refrigerator? Why on earth would you bring the refrigerator?" And she said, "Because our tickets are on top of it." Thank you.